Hello, I'm Melissa Kono. I'm with UW Extension here in Trempealeau County, and this is a Meet the Candidates series for the November 5th presidential election. 2024 has been a very busy election year with just one election remaining. On Tuesday, November 5th, we have the presidential and fall general election. This includes races for U.S. President, U.S. Senator, Representative in Congress, and for those of us here in this area, that's District 3. Also State Senator, Representative to the State Assembly, and then Trempealeau County Clerk, Trempealeau County Treasurer, Trempealeau County Register of Deeds, and the District Attorney for Trempealeau County are also on the November ballot. Due to redistricting, there are now 3 assembly districts in Trempealeau County. Those in the northern part of the county are in District 93, those in the middle of the county are now District 29, and some southern parts of the county are now in District 94. All candidates running for U.S. Congress in District 3 were invited to be on the show. All assembly candidates for Districts 93, 29, and 94 were invited. I'm joined by Stacey Klein. She is a candidate for the Wisconsin State Senate for District 32. Stacey, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I think a lot of people here in Trempealeau County know me, but I was born in the Dodge Pine Creek area, so I grew up there, went to Arcadia High School. After I graduated from there, I graduated from Carthage College in Kenosha, so I spent some time in the Milwaukee area, found out urban life is not for me, but came back here about 11 years ago. So I was elected to the Trempealeau County Board a couple terms ago, so that's been a really good fit. I work as a financial advisor, and I'm married. My husband works for the Army Corps of Engineers. My daughter is 10, almost 11, but going on 16. You know how that goes. So I've spent almost all of my life in the Coulee region and just looking to serve at a higher capacity.
Okay. And what makes you interested in running for this particular office? As you mentioned, you do hold elected office. You have experience with that, but what makes you interested in this particular office?
Well, a couple of the main reasons when we look at the strict levy limits for Wisconsin, I mean, our state is one of the strictest in the nation. And so at the local level, town boards, county boards, we have to be very effective and efficient with the money. And I think that's something that's missing from Madison. So that's an area that I'd really like to focus on. Also, I have a daughter, like I mentioned, so just making sure that she has the same opportunities that we had as we were growing up and that we preserve that for her and future generations. Also looking at the current incumbent, I was quite disappointed by the voting record there. I don't know if it accurately reflects Western Wisconsin, so I feel that we could have a better representative.
Okay. Any other issues in particular that you are interested in?
Sure. So I mentioned local government. So I place a large emphasis on that because state funding for local governments has stagnated since the 80s. We did have the shared revenue bill that came through. So that was a tremendous help, but it was just a step in the right direction. So I have been in contact with many of the other legislators. We would like to work on bringing back more money to the local governments for roads, broadband, the basics that we need. Another area would be mental health. So here in Trempealeau County, I'm on the Board of Health. I'm also the chair for the Board of Trustees for the Healthcare Center. And then recently we got back to working on the County Health Improvement Plan. So looking at how we can partner with our different entities throughout the area to make sure that we are doing all that we can, especially for our young people, to set them up to have great mental health. So, I've been studying past bills on that, bills that were proposed and vetoed or didn't pass, and just looking at ways that we can help at all ages make sure that they're receiving the care and treatment that they need, and that's available, and especially in the rural areas. I think that gets to be an issue too, but mental health is another area that I would be focused on.
Okay. And you are running for District 32. There's been some redistricting. Can you explain that?
Sure. So it's interesting because the district line actually comes right through my county board district. So I was living in the town of Trempealeau, and then we actually just moved to the town of Caledonia because town of Trempealeau is part of District 10 for state senate. Town of Caledonia, and then Galesville and Ettrick, so that's town of Gale, city of Galesville, town of Ettrick, and village of Ettrick are those 5 municipalities are all part of the 32nd State Senate District.
Okay.
So that's lumped in with La Crosse, some of Monroe, and almost all of Vernon County.
Wow. And, what are you hearing from voters in those areas? Obviously, new territory for you, but what are some of the things that you're hearing?
There's consistency throughout the district when I'm door knocking. A lot of families are just struggling to make ends meet right now. We have a multi-billion-dollar surplus at the state level, which I believe a lot of that money should come back out to the taxpayers. And again, going back to voting record, the current incumbent had voted against 3 of the 4 tax relief bills. So that's a big concern, making sure that our families can afford groceries and gas and the simple things. People are looking for fresh faces. Someone to represent them that's not entrenched in politics. We do hear of those that go to Madison or Washington, D.C. and, become one of the bureaucrats in that sense. So I'm much too stubborn for that. My focus has always been with county board. I make sure I get out to my towns to see what's going on and have that communication. So they're craving that common sense that, to take us forward so that we're spending money on the things that we need that will make our communities great. So that's, and also, I do run across some parents that are concerned about parental rights in school. I don't see a whole lot of issues in Western Wisconsin, but we hear things going on across the nation, and just want to make sure that we have that on our radar. So if we see things going on, that our parents are still confident that they don't have to worry about that issue going forward. As far as other topics, I'll get kind of onesies, twosies once in a while with different topics, but those would be the main ones right now. Okay.
And if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
So as I, just to circle back to what I talked about, gaining or bringing back more money for the local governments, because I think that's where we're going to make the biggest impacts for our communities, working on mental health. And then also, we're getting into some of these contentious issues. There was a bill to protect women's sports. So, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she's getting into volleyball and sports, and want to make sure that women have the same opportunities going forward, and that we shouldn't be turning the clock back 50 years and fighting the same fights that, my mom tells me what it was like before Title IX, and we shouldn't have to go back to that. Again, not seeing a whole lot of it in Western Wisconsin or Wisconsin itself, but just want to make sure that we're protecting that. But I really want to focus on the intergovernmental relationships. Right now, there's almost 70 municipalities in this district, and I've been working to get out to a monthly board meeting. I've been to over half of them. We know at the timeline I'm not going to be able to get to all, but I'm going to contact and speak with all of them, before the election. But making sure that we have that open line of communication. So again, focused on what's best for our communities and not getting wrapped up in all the political BS that goes on at the state capitol, so that we can all thrive and focus on that. So those are just a couple of the main areas, that of course going into an office like this, you almost have to know a little bit about a lot, but there are opportunities where you could really specialize in areas and do some good. And just one more thing, I tend to be a natural mediator, looking for that common ground. Where can we start and then build off from there? And then I'm also a person of action. So I see the opportunity where combining those skills, you don't want government to always move fast, but sometimes you want it to move along a little quicker to get some things done. And I feel that I could be a strong proponent for that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Stacey Klein is a candidate for Wisconsin State Senate for District 32. Thank you, Stacey.
Yeah, thank you.
Joining me now is State Senator Brad Pfaff. He is running for re-election in the 32nd Senate District. Brad, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
So tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm Brad Pfaff. I am a proud husband. My wife, Betty, we met at a 4-H leadership luncheon, and we have 2 children, Andrew and Lizzie. And I am a proud son of the rolling hills, coulees, and valleys of northern La Crosse County. My family's been farming in that area since they first came to this country in the mid-1800s, and I'm very proud of my rural roots. because it provided me with the values of hard work, dedication, and resilience, and believing in oneself, and recognizing that things sometimes are bigger than just yourself. You need to work together. And so I've had the opportunity to serve in the Wisconsin State Senate, representing my friends and neighbors and my community since 2020. And I greatly enjoy the opportunity to listen and to learn.
And because you have served in that office, can you explain a little bit more about that district?
So redistricting recently took place, and we have seen a change in the geographic makeup. The 32nd State Senate District encompasses southern Trempealeau County, from just south of Blair, Beach Corners, as well as the village of Ettrick, town of Ettrick, the city of Galesville, the town of Gale, town of Caledonia, all of La Crosse County, all of Vernon County, as well as western Monroe County, which is the city of Sparta, as well as the village of Cashton, and many of the small communities and rural areas in western Monroe County. 177,000 hardworking residents call the 32nd Senate District home.
Okay. And, because you have represented that district, tell us about some of the issues that are important in that district.
Well, I will say this, is that the people of the 32nd Senate District are some of the most humble, hardworking people that I know. They just want to make sure that their state government is working for them. And so I can tell you that making sure that we put their interests first, we recognize the importance of hard work and fairness and freedom. That's what's important to the people of the 32nd State Senate District. They believe that we want to make sure that we have personal responsibility, but we provide opportunity for people to get ahead. And I take those values very serious, and I take them to Madison and do my very best to make sure that people of this area, we get our fair share from Madison. And so I am proud of the fact that we were able to get some much needed transportation funding back to this area. I'm very proud of the fact that we continue to advocate for our strong public education system that we have in this area. And we're going to continue to invest in working families, because that's what's so very important.
Okay, and what makes you interested in running for this particular office?
Well, again, my family's been in this area since they first came to this country in the mid-1800s. And I was taught by my parents that we need to continue to stand up and make sure that people in this area, we get our fair share, then our voices are heard. I grew up in a farm family in which every single day, before I went to school, we had to milk the cows and we had to do our chores. And we got home from school, we had to do the same thing. We were taught to give back, but we were also taught individual responsibility. And I just wanted to make sure when this seat came open in 2020, when people asked me to consider running for this office, I wanted to make sure that the values that I was raised with and the values that my friends and my neighbors have shared with me, that those values were heard in the state capitol. And so I'm proud to represent this area, and I want to continue to make sure that the people of this area know that they've got someone that will work hard for their interest in Madison.
And if reelected, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, it's extremely important that we continue to focus on working families. I think we all recognize the fact that prices are too high right now. We need to make sure that we continue to work to build out our state's economy. Our supply chains need to be broadened. We grow an awful lot of high quality food products in this area. We need to make sure that our family farmers have more markets for those products. We need to broaden that supply chain. We need to make sure that we continue to lower costs because they're too high. And one way that we can do that is we need to cap the price of insulin. My son has type 1 diabetes. I know the price of insulin, and I know what that means for a life-saving drug. And so I want to make sure that we cap that price of insulin. I want to hold these pharmaceutical companies accountable. Prescription drug prices are too high. I want to make sure that our working men who go to work every single day, that we've got childcare that's affordable and available at a local area for our children. It needs to be in a loving, caring environment and something that is locally based. And so I want to work with our child care sector to make sure that we can expand opportunities for our working families. I just want to continue to make sure that Western Wisconsin continues to have a diverse vibrant economy, and that from people of all walks of life get an opportunity to participate and have an opportunity. That's what's important to me, and that's what I hear when I'm knocking on doors and talking to the constituents.
Anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I want to say this, is that Western Wisconsin is a great place to live and work and to raise one's family. And I am so proud to be a son of this area. This area has provided so much for me and my family, and I will continue to make sure that the people of this area know that they've got a state senator that will champion their interests. Today's politics is way too divisive, and it doesn't need to be like that. I mean, we can disagree with one another, but we don't need to be so disagreeable. We can recognize the fact that we can work together to find a common purpose, and I will do that. I learned on the farm a long time ago that when the cows get out, you need to put those cows in, but you got to share a fence line, and your neighbor may not always agree with you when it comes to politics, but they're your neighbor, and that's who we are in this area, is that we can come together in tough times and try and get things done. And I promise all the voters out there that for the last 4 years I have followed what I was taught as a young boy, and that is to try and find common ground. And I was identified by the nonpartisan Legislative Fiscal Bureau as the most bipartisan state senator in the state Senate. And I'm proud of that, because I do believe that we can find common ground. And if I get the opportunity to be reelected in November, I pledge the voters of this district that I will continue in my bipartisan effort to make sure that their interests and not the special interests are heard and considered in Madison.
Well, that's remarkable. Could you share a couple examples of, maybe what led to that acknowledgement, or, some of the bipartisan ways to make ground, maybe?
Well, I will say this, is that it's much too easy right now in our political world to just choose a side, may it be a red side or a blue side, and just to be a political partisan warrior. And that's not who I am, because that's, at the end of the day, the work has to be done. Those are farm values. Your listeners know that. We've got to get the job done. And that's what we need to do in our state legislatures. We need to focus on the things that are important. We need to grow our economy, but we need to make sure that we provide opportunities for individuals from all walks of life to have an opportunity to participate in that economy. We need to make sure that we keep our education system strong. We need to make sure that our rural schools get their fair share. We need to make sure that our rural schools are doing a good job of educating our students, but we need to make sure that they have the resources that are important. We need to make sure that we have a transportation system that works. As somebody who comes from the farm, I know that we need to make sure that our milk trucks and our feed trucks can get to the farm, and I know that we need to make sure that we can get our commerce, the crops that we grow. We got to get that to the marketplace. We ourselves need to be able to get to our jobs. It's so important we have a good transportation system. We need to make sure that we focus on the issues that are important to the people of this district. And it's too easy right now to try and divide one another. But the important things is bringing people together. And I will say this, is that right now, the cost for the working family is too high. And we need to do better when it comes to lowering those costs. And to do that, we have to focus on the cost of childcare. We have to focus on the cost of prescription drugs and the price of insulin. We must focus on the importance of making sure we build out our supply chain, so we're never in a situation again in which prices spike the way they did during the right after the COVID pandemic. We can't have that kind of situation. We need to have legislators that will focus on the priorities. And, I will continue to do that because, those were the values I was taught from my parents early on. Brad, focus on what's important and get the job done. And that's what I will do.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you for
here.
giving me the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Senator Brad Pfaff is running for re-election in the 32nd Senate District. Next, I'm joined by Paul Hambleton. He is a candidate running for District 10 for the Wisconsin Senate. Paul, thanks for being here.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Yeah, so start off by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name's Paul Hambleton. Very pleased to be here today. Thanks for asking. I'm a retired teacher. I taught in Baldwin Woodville for about 20 years. I'm an English teacher and a special education teacher. It's probably the first thing to know about me. But I do have a pretty diverse background. I actually was born in Minnesota and raised in Roseville area. I come from a family of farmers and workers and coal miners, and that's kind of my background from northern Minnesota, around Mille Lacs Lake, Isle, Minnesota. Pretty large family. We still get together regularly for family reunions, that kind of thing. But as a kid, I grew up there in the Roseville area and graduated from Ramsey High School. I went to Augsburg College and then to University of Wisconsin in Madison, and never really came back. Still have a lot of family in Minnesota, but when I graduated from Madison, moved to St. Croix County, and most of my life since then, in the mid-70s, I've lived in St. Croix County. I really started off raising my kids there, and was a carpenter in the area. Did a lot of barn, farm carpentry, cement work, roofing, additions, a lot of things like that. Also taught at WITC part-time when my kids were young. And it would be in the mid-'80s, I really decided that I wanted to go back into teaching. I had originally trained for that, thinking of higher education, but my heart was really headed back toward teaching. So as my kids started school themselves, I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I went back to UW River Falls and got certified in K-12 and started teaching in Baldwin. And my first work was at the elementary school as an EBT, special education teacher. So I worked with kids who struggled with a variety of mental health problems, or autistic kids, or from early childhood up through 4th grade. And from there, I kind of moved with a group of kids, and I taught then language arts in middle school. Was fortunate enough, just the way my career advanced, that I moved with a whole set of kids that some of the special ed kids obviously ended up in my language arts classes. And for 8 years, I was a middle school language arts teacher. It was a wonderful time, which is kind of surprising to say, because a lot of folks say, you know, you're working with middle school kids, that could be a really tough population. But they were a lot of fun. And the secret I learned then is don't do anything longer than about 10 or 15 minutes. That's the trick with middle school kids. Keep it moving. And a lot of projects, and it was a really wonderful teaching experience. It was during that time of my teaching experience that I really began to develop, I think, as a teacher, and really began to understand the craft of teaching, and took it to a different level. In fact, at that time, I took what are called the National Board Professional Teaching Standards. There's a whole assessment that you can do, and I was one of the early pioneers, I guess you'd say, in that, in the late 90s, and I attained that in the year 2000. So it was really an extraordinary professional development experience for myself, and really understanding that craft of teaching, aside from just the subject area of language arts, but how you actually implement the teaching practices in the best way. I really got interested in that professional issue side of education. I went on to teach at the high school then in Baldwin Woodville. Taught freshman English, sophomore, junior English, as well as senior college prep. But my love of teaching was really always about, I will call them at this point, reluctant learners, kids who struggled in learning, kids who did have special needs, but also, just students who, where they didn't really feel like they fit in school. So, as well as with kids that were college bound, but that full range of students. My interest in the profession of teaching really led me to another place eventually. And in about 2006, I went to work representing teachers. So it led to a career where I was now working for the Teachers Association and advocating for teachers, as well as for other folks who worked in school districts around the area. So I was now employed by an affiliate of WEAC, the teachers union in the state, and I worked out of Menominee, worked for 22 different school districts around the area, representing teachers and support staff. Long about 2010, Scott Walker came along. And I think a lot of folks know that was a very divisive, difficult era in Wisconsin politics. And since I was working for the Teachers Association at the time, a lot of changes happened. I think folks will remember that teacher contracts were under scrutiny, and there was a bill passed through Congress, or through our legislature, called Act 10, that really changed the terms of employment, not just for teachers and support staff, but for public employees across the state. I made a decision then to go to work for the teachers union, actually in Maine, as a manager of a teachers union, and that was the Maine Education Association. So my wife and I, she's also a teacher, we moved to Maine, and there I worked in that capacity for several years, which also then led to another step. So I worked for the teachers and support staff in Maine, and that led to working for the Department of Education in Maine. And there I worked as the chief academic officer, and I worked in the state legislature there in Maine, a lot of educational policy, including things like school funding, career and technical education, implementation of federal policy, and also anytime the legislature passed a law that pertained to the public schools in Maine or other education law, then it was part of my charge in my role there to implement that law over time, so, or to help see it through with other folks that worked at the department. So it was a real experience in law and how it was applied to public policy. It was a wonderful opportunity to be part of that. Ultimately, it was 2018 now. My parents, who, again, back to Minnesota, were elderly and needed some help. So my wife and I moved back to Wisconsin and to Hudson this time. So we moved to Hudson, helped mom and dad. I was still very interested in being involved with politics, so I joined the St. Croix County Democratic Party and became very engaged with that as a volunteer. And that was now 6 years ago. That led to me running for office here. So that's kind of my background, history, story. And the reason I'm running for office is I bring that, I guess, that experience, that package of skills that I have attained over my career, an interest in small business, a love for this Western Wisconsin, a passion for public education. I really see its value in our in our rural communities, as well as the economic driver that it is. I understand school financing enough to understand that right now it's in trouble. we really need to make some fixes for that. So those are the things that really motivated me to step up and say, I'm willing to give this a shot. And that's why I'm running for office. So.
Okay. So you're running for the 10th district, and there's been some redistricting. So can you explain the layout of that district now?
Sure. It's changed a few times over the last, couple decades, really. But the new Senate District 10 starts in St. Croix County, so the very north end of St. Croix County, which would probably be, if you drew a line from Somerset to Glenwood City, that's kind of the north end of it. So it doesn't include Polk County anymore at all. So it's that north end of St. Croix County. And then you can just follow St. Croix River and the Mississippi River all the way down to the village of Trempealeau. Draw a line from Trempealeau all the way over to, it's going to be south of Arcadia, the area over here where we are now, in Trempealeau County. And then go north up to pretty close to Osseo. And then draw a line from Osseo pretty close to Menominee, just a little bit west of there. And another line up to Glenwood City, and you're pretty much captured it. So it's St. Croix County, Pierce County, Buffalo County, Pepin County, and most of Trempealeau County. So it's almost down to La Crosse.
So
that whole
obviously
area.
the most beautiful part
It
of
is
the
most
entire
beautiful
state.
part.
Yeah.
Sometimes we call it the West Coast of,
Yes.
especially with Lake Pepin and Mississippi River.
Yep.
Really extraordinary
Yeah,
area.
it's beautiful. Okay, so tell us, if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, there's a few different things that come to mind right away. I think our school funding is kind of at a crisis point right now, and there are several reasons for that. We could probably talk about that for a long time. But what we're seeing right now is it has come to the point where we're seeing statewide this year, we're going to get pretty close to, it's probably be more if you include this past spring and then what's coming this fall, over 200 referendums to exceed the revenue caps that were put in place back now 1993. So why is that? Because so we're putting a lot of pressure on property taxes once again for school funding. One of the factors in that is that the state share that was promised back in 1990 has not kept up with inflation. Another reason for that is the expanding cost of special education. So when the state was supposed to and has reimbursed districts 40% of special ed costs, but if you look at that trend, special ed costs have really expanded over the time, much higher than inflation, to the point where this year you can almost account for almost all of the money that would be raised through the referendums. You could almost say that it's mostly due to the rising costs of special education. So we aren't reimbursing it at a rate that's keeping up. But there are other factors that go into that. So school funding is really, really getting to be something has to shift. At the same time, I think most people know that we have accumulated a state budget surplus of $6-7 billion, depending on how you look at it. So that's one of the things, if I'm elected, that I really want to go work with others, across the aisle and try to figure out how to do that. Well, the consequences we're seeing out there when I knock doors, and I have knocked a lot of doors, I'll tell you, it's a big area, but a lot of doors, is especially senior citizens in our rural communities that are very concerned. They live on fixed incomes and they are very concerned about rising property taxes. So that's one of the issues that we're just going to have to deal with. Another one is small business and how do we incentivize small business now that our rural communities really do depend upon small businesses. And there are a number of factors in that. One of the good things is that broadband is finally being expanded. I mean, there's still some work to do there, but high-speed internet is a real asset that is happening through the expenditures that have happened in the last few years. And hopefully that'll continue and we'll get everybody the kind of speed they need. But there are some barriers there to that, and one of them is daycare. Folks, daycare now costs as much as college tuition, for instance. So I know I have 6 kids, all of them adults, and that for them the cost of daycare is almost prohibitive. So the challenge really becomes, do I go to work? How am I going to afford daycare, especially if you have more than one child, especially if they're young. So
what I have found too is it's just having access to
Just
child.
having
Even
access.
if I could afford it, is just not a lot of slots out there.
you might be on a waiting list for a long time. Yep. So just having access. Another is going to be access to healthcare. So that's we saw what happened in the Chippewa Valley with closure of 2 large facilities. So that's another one that I think we need to get right on. Expanding Medicaid, we've been waiting for that for a long time. I know there have been folks working on that. That's something that needs to happen. I feel I would take action on that as soon as I could, and look for bipartisan solutions again on access to health care and expanding Medicaid, and looking for, it's a complex problem. It isn't a simple solution. It's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's another one.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share?
Boy, there's a lot of things I'd like to share, really. I'm pretty concerned about another area is, this can be a sensitive subject, but is around farming. We've, the proliferation, I'm going to almost say now, of the CAFOs and the concerns that starts to raise for water quality. This is an area, because I understand the need for efficiency in farming, and I understand what has, to some degree, what has driven that is our larger federal policy as well as state policy. The whole notion that you have to be big in order to survive in farming. But a lot of that is driven by the incentives that we've had out there. One of the things I'd like to see develop, and there are models for it, is how do we incentivize and provide markets for smaller farms, farm to table kind of things, because that's where the small businesses are. It's not to get rid of efficiency or get rid of large farms, but as the CAFOs have proliferated, the dangers to water has also proliferated. The dangers from the effluents, from the 78 million gallons of manure, things like that have created some real issues. I was at a DNR hearing for in Elmwood for a dairy there that wants to expand, and you hear the concerns of the neighbors that live in that vicinity of one of the farms. They're really disturbing, and we really have to think twice about continuing down that road without putting the right kind of protections in place. But the other concern is then, where is this all headed? If there are ways to incentivize the small farms, and there are, I think, some ideas that we at least have to look at for that.
Okay. Anything else?
I could keep going, but
Okay.
that's our time. Then.
Okay.
leave it
Well,
at that.
thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure getting to know more about you.
Yep. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Paul Hambleton is running as a Democrat in the 10th Senate District for Wisconsin State Senate. Thank you, Paul. I'm joined today by Christian Phelps. He's running as a candidate for the Assembly District 93 as a Democrat. Christian, thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's exciting to be in a county-owned public access TV station. I'm very passionate about local media, actually.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. So first, start off by telling us about yourself.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Eau Claire, was born in 1993, and in the 30 years that I've been a Chippewa Valley person, I've seen a lot of changes in our community. I've lived in Eau Claire the majority of my life. I left a couple of times, went to college outside of the state of Wisconsin, then came back for a couple of years and lived in Madison, and then went to graduate school again outside of Wisconsin before coming back again. But I went to public schools in Eau Claire for all 13 years of my childhood, was raised by public school educators who were themselves raised by public school educators in Wisconsin. So our public education system is really near and dear to me and has kind of been the through line in my life, both professionally, personally, and in terms of my advocacy. I got a degree from Vassar College in 2016, a liberal arts degree, and didn't really know what I wanted to do yet, but I knew that I really cared about young people, education in the community. So I worked as a paraprofessional for a couple of years in special education at an elementary school in Madison. And that was really actually a very eye-opening job to have, because I had been aware of the ways that Wisconsin had started disinvesting in the public for several years, again, being raised by public school educators. I was 17 when Act 10 was introduced, and basically an unprecedented attack on the public education system and public sector laborers was kind of unleashed that year. I had participated in walkouts and protests with my friends, and was getting ready to become a voting age adult and kind of couldn't believe what I was seeing when it passed anyway, and it felt like democracy was being so disrespected. So I had been aware of that, but working as a special ed paraprofessional, I saw up close that I needed 2, sometimes 3 jobs in order to supplement my income. All my other hourly employee peers needed supplemental income of some kind as well. And, we were navigating the stairs and the infrastructure of a 106-year-old school building and spending more time just sort of navigating crisis after crisis than actually providing these students with the education and the peer connection that they really deserved. And it was because the state had been starving that public school of the resources it really needed to thrive. I first got that job 8 years ago, and in the 8 years since then, no child in Wisconsin has seen a budget that was even better than the previous one. And so I worry about letting another generation of children go through our system being continuously deprived of the resources that I know our communities want to invest in them. I ended up deciding that my skills are better used educating the broader public, and so I went into journalism. I know how hard you work. I got a master's in journalism from Cardiff University in the UK, actually, which I got in January 2020, and that's the year that I came back to the Chippewa Valley and have stayed ever since. I've been working for the last 4 years or so at a nonprofit organization called Wisconsin Public Education Network as communications director, where I've helped people in my community and other communities around the state advocate for children and educators in public schools in whatever way they want to do so. More funding, passing referendums, advocating at the school board level to make sure that our public systems are malleable and responsive to the public. And I've met a lot of amazing people through that work, but also it's just been another avenue which has shown me that the status quo of our state legislature is so frequently the obstacle. I've personally advocated on issues of housing and indigenous rights and many other things that I know are near and dear to the entire community. And the most common denominator when we don't get what our community wants, needs, and deserves is the status quo of the state legislature. So that's kind of how I came up in West Central Wisconsin. It's a little bit of my professional and personal background. I love the Chippewa Valley. I love West Central Wisconsin. I know that our shared values are really something that we can all get behind, because I've seen it over and over in my life from amazing community organizers and just social events. And just yesterday I was at Juneteenth events in 2 different communities in the Chippewa Valley. I mean, there's a lot for us to unite around. And if there weren't, I wouldn't still be here. But I think this is our year to start kind of reinvesting in the public, and not only putting more resources, but more responsible rhetoric in favor of the public institutions, and also just our public communities and who we really are. So that's kind of why I'm doing this and what brought me here.
Okay, so you're running for the 93rd district for the Wisconsin Assembly. Can you describe that district for us? I know there's been some recent changes with redistricting, and I think it's a little confusing for everyone about where the boundaries lie now.
Yeah, talking about the new legislative maps is actually probably the most frequent topic of conversation I'm having with voters right now, because it is very new, and this district is quite different from how it used to be. It is for the better. You know, that same year that Act 10 was introduced and passed despite so much public outcry was the year that our legislative maps were gerrymandered by the majority party at that time. So the Republican Party legislators and governor basically made sure that they could pick and choose their voters, and that the legislature would remain in heavy Republican control for 13 years. That has finally changed, and these new maps are much more constitutional and will make a 50-50 state like Wisconsin have a legislature that looks a lot more like what the state looks like. And I think that's a good thing. It's more democratic. The 93rd district actually isn't even the district I used to live in, because the way that gerrymandering works is that sort of if there are population centers that tend to vote against the majority party, they try to get boxed in. So the entire city of Eau Claire used to basically be the 91st district, and then the 93rd covered areas south and west of Eau Claire, but not really the city itself. The new 93rd looks exactly like what a legislative district should look like. It is both rural and urban. It includes roughly the western half of the city of Eau Claire. It includes UW Eau Claire campus, CVTC, and it includes parts of Dunn, Eau Claire, and Trempealeau counties, with a pretty even split actually between urban and rural residents. And I think that that is a great change, because it means that the representative from this district doesn't have the option of prioritizing rural or urban at the expense of the other one. You have to represent both, and I think that's a good thing. The parts of Trempealeau County that this district covers are basically the northern part, Osseo, Oliva, and Strum, and their surrounding townships.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that lesson. So what makes you interested for running for this particular office?
This was never the plan. I never really wanted to do this.
It never is.
But you know, the new legislative maps really do give us an opportunity to start making our state policy and our state investments match the priorities of our community. And the state has disinvested from the public for so long that I'm very worried, because I don't think we have any more time to waste or any more time to wait for that investment in the public to start again. I've been advocating on multiple issues for a long time. You know, I've been in the advocacy space. I've written on these topics. I've professionally advocated for a few years, and personally for many more than that. And most of that advocacy has taken me to the state legislative level. Again, because so frequently I found that the common denominator in the root of the problem was happening at the state level. A state budget where resources are just being deprived and hoarded in the Capitol with this irresponsible surplus we have right now. Taxes we all already paid that the state has refused to invest. The Republican legislative majority has refused to invest back in our communities like we asked them to. And on so many issues, you know, housing issues at the local level, I've found that in many ways municipalities' hands are tied, and that's true in small municipalities as well, in counties and small towns and townships. When the state doesn't give municipalities the resources they need, they can't help their communities the way that they want to. You know, Wisconsin has reverted after the overturning of Roe v. Wade to what I find to be a grotesque, no exceptions abortion ban written many years before women even had the right to vote in Wisconsin. All of these things just kept leading me back to the state legislative level. And because of that, this is the level where I know my stuff the best, and it's where I think the most change needs to be made in Wisconsin. when I saw that the 93rd had a chance for good, bold, and strategic representation for the first time in a long time, I just found myself unable to talk myself out of doing this. You know, it feels like a personal hurdle you have to clear in order to be willing to do this. But come January 2025, I really don't think we have any time to wait for a strategic legislature that's going to start reinvesting in the public, crawling back from these disinvestments, restoring responsible rhetoric that makes young people feel safe and welcome in our communities. And I think the legislature is where I'm best equipped to make that difference. So I think this is our time as a community, and I think we'll really regret it if we don't take this opportunity as the responsibility it is to put, not just more Democrats in the legislature, but more sort of bold strategic thinkers that represent our communities.
So if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
There's a lot that we need to accomplish, and I think that we need to have in mind both the North Star, the big changes that we really do need in our state and our society, and also the small changes that we can take along the way as the result of responsible negotiations with our colleagues and constituents that move us along that path. Some of my priorities are funding strong public schools. Our public schools have been defunded relative to inflation every year for the last 16 years in a row. And there are school districts in the state of Wisconsin and here in the 93rd, especially small rural school districts, that literally can't survive another bad budget. And they're going to be looking at things like being absorbed, closing, going to do or die referendums that may or may not pass. We've seen those already accelerating. We need to invest in our public schools right now because it's actually an emergency. And the way you do that, even in a split legislature, is you point out where the legislature has been the most out of alignment with public opinion. And a perfect example of that is special education. I have never met anybody, no matter what their political affiliation is, who's really happy to hear that the state of Wisconsin has only been funding 30% of special education. That's really wrong, morally wrong, and we have the funds to fund special ed fully without raising any taxes. The surplus is already there. So if we point that out to constituents around Wisconsin and sort of hold ourselves and our colleagues of both parties accountable for actually doing what the public wants, we can boost special education funding dramatically in the next budget, but only if we have strategic legislators that know how the budget works and know how to do that. So that's a big priority for me. In addition, we need to start phasing out private school vouchers. Every single school district that touches the 93rd is losing some of its funds to private schools that are not held to the same level of accountability and are not required to accept all students. And the enrollment caps on that program are set to come off in 2026. And I've never heard anybody explain how we're going to pay for that. So with this 2025 budget being written very shortly after the new legislature is sworn in, those are two serious priorities for me, that we start to responsibly address the bleeding of public school funds to unaccountable private schools, and to seriously boost special education funding so that we can get closer to the North Star of just having our schools funded based on what students need and not based on property taxes the way it is right now. Other priorities for me are restoring reproductive freedom. That's one of the major things I'm hearing at the doors when I talk to voters, and I've actually been really touched by the fact that age is no indicator, particularly among women, of people who really see that as a priority. I was talking to somebody in her late 80s, yesterday, who said that is her main concern this year, because she's worried about her daughters and granddaughters and other women in the community, and just wants to see these basic rights of healthcare expanded. So I think we need to address the fact that the abortion ban and the fact that it's all sort of tied up in a volatile Supreme Court right now is just not acceptable in the public, and that we need to legislate towards some more stable reproductive healthcare access. The Eau Claire area also lost 2 hospitals abruptly this year, and that is largely because the state of Wisconsin has allowed for this system to be so unstable that can happen. I've talked to a lot of people who've had to have appointments changed. Sometimes they're now back on a wait list. They don't know how long it's going to be. Emergency rooms are full. People are being funneled into one singular facility when they really could be funneled into multiple based on their needs for less cost. The state can grant to provide more specialty mental health clinics. That would be cheaper for everybody, and it would be more efficient so that mental health emergencies aren't being treated in emergency rooms, but instead are being treated in mental health clinics. And we must accept federal Medicaid expansion. I believe that healthcare is a human right and shouldn't be tied to people's employment. Wisconsin actually is in a unique position as the only state in the US that has actually passed public healthcare, public single-payer healthcare through one body of its legislature. That happened in 2007. It passed in the Senate, not the Assembly. But we have a blueprint that I think we could really be a leader in the country on showing what it looks like to take care of your populace and make sure that healthcare is a human right. We don't get there in 2025, I realize, but we can do some strategic things along the way that move us closer to healthcare as a human right and invest back in the community. So I'd say those three things are three of my top priorities. It's hard to itemize them because we also need to expand our protection of the environment. I often just say that I'm a pro-public candidate, and that means I believe in the public. I've seen the public in the Chippewa Valley and throughout Wisconsin really unite around some shared values. We must invest in public education, public land to protect the environment, public health, public transportation, and public participation in democracy. And so these are some of the pillars that I think are really shared among people of all stripes and in our diverse communities around the Chippewa Valley, that strategic legislators who have community organizing background, communications background, and the time to really get into the weeds of this job can start making some real headway on next year.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Christian Phelps is an Assembly candidate for District 93. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
Well, I'm joined today by Ryan Huebsch. He is a candidate running for the 94th Assembly District. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Ryan Huebsch, running for the 94th Assembly District, which I will kind of go into the new district with the lines that are drawn. So we used to have just outside of the city of La Crosse. So that would be West Salem, Holman, Bangor, Berry Mills, and everything around the city. That changed where we lost Bangor and Berry Mills, and now we're only into West Salem, Holman, and Onalaska in La Crosse County. But we picked up the southern part of Trempealeau County, and it's bigger than most people think. So we have Galesville and Ettrick, but we also have the towns of Caledonia and Gale as well. So we have that now in just outside of Trempealeau too, the town of Trempealeau. So that's the brand new district. But a little bit about myself. I grew up in West Salem. I was born in Onalaska, grew up in West Salem, going to public education schools there in West Salem High School, where then I went to TC and transferred to UW La Crosse, where I graduated with honors there, which I had a blast at UWL. It's a great school to be there. But after that, I had the opportunity to go and work at the state capitol for a couple of senators. One, Senator Scott Fitzgerald, now the congressman, and the senator out of Green Bay, Eric Wimberger. I had a bunch of private sector jobs in the area in Onalaska and West Salem before that, but that experience in the Capitol gave me just that, a really good experience in working with policy and constituent services. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But then I came back and actually ran a campaign. Senator Dan Kapanke, I don't know if you that name is, he's everywhere. Everyone knows him. And
it's hard to miss that name.
Oh my Lord, he's a great man. And I lucky to call him a friend and actually have his endorsement too. But I ran his campaign and worked in the Capitol a little bit more, but came back and ran for office myself here in the what used to be the old 94th Assembly District in 2022. Now just came up short, unfortunately, just a couple hundred votes out of a little over 30,000. But we worked our tails off and knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. And I think we were actually some of the most, or my team and I, Jason in the corner over there, we knocked on some of the most doors that we've seen in the entire state. So we like to hold that and that's a good accomplishment, I guess, that we could say. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. But I also right now currently am the executive director for the Wisconsin Conservative Energy Forum. Now we're a nonprofit that works with conservative side of things and kind of advocating for clean and renewable energy, which can be a tough task sometimes. But that gives me the opportunity to go across the state and talk to conservatives about the importance of the all of the above approach to renewable energy. So nuclear energy, wind, solar, I mean, name it, and we're talking about it. Yeah, so that's what I do now, and obviously running for the 94th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what makes you interested in running for assembly?
Yeah, so here in Trempealeau County, you guys had Treg Prunchinsky, the representative, and I've taken over for him. And I'm lucky to call him a friend and also have his endorsement. He did a great job down in Madison. I want to continue that. I want to make sure that we have that great representation that Treg had in this area. Unfortunately, we don't have that down in the southern part of the 94th now. Steve, my opponent, Steve Doyle, has kind of turned his back on us, unfortunately, and that's kind of why I want to run. And there's a few points that I want to make sure that people hear and I apologize for all the political ads that everyone's going to get. We all hate getting in the mail and all the TV ads, and I apologize for that. But we're making sure that we're telling the truth on this. So some of the issues that really hit home for me, we had one of the largest tax cuts in the entire state history. And actually, I don't know why, but he brags about this. He had COVID during that, when they took the vote in Madison. He had COVID and it was in his office and came down and made a heroic fight to take this vote. That vote was to block this tax cut, which blows my mind. That's not what we need. We need tax cuts here. One of the other big things is public education. We saw one of the largest increase in funding for public education this last year, $1 billion. He voted against it. That's turning his back on the students and the great teachers that we have over here in western Wisconsin. Now, I can't talk about the other side of the state. Milwaukee public school system is kind of going through some bad things. But over here, we're proud of our schools. We're proud of our students and our teachers. He turned his back on us and voted against the funding for that. That's just unfortunate. Another thing, and this is just common sense, and I don't know if we can hear the rain coming down right now, but that it kind of hints to that. Clean drinking water. A common sense issue, something that we should have everywhere. We have an issue down in French Island right now where people are still drinking out of bottled water. I have friends and tons of friends actually still drinking out of bottled water. We had an opportunity to fix this issue. We had an opportunity to have $125 million come into the state and clean this issue up, this PFAS, and get clean drinking water. Now, our friend Dan Kapanke is actually the town chairman down in town of Campbell. He's working to make sure that we have drinking water there in town of Campbell. But we had $125 million proposed to help fix this. He voted against that. My opponent voted against that. This is just a common sense issue that we're just continuing to run into, and it's unfortunate to say the least. And this is why I want to make sure that I follow the footsteps of Treg, of where we have good representation. We've lost that down in Madison, and it's unfortunate.
So Treg Brzezinski is still running, but due to redistricting, he just doesn't cover that part now.
So he is now, I think he's got Trempealeau, the town of Trempealeau, and then everything north. He's got a big district. His is more rural, so he'll cover all
so he'll still running for assembly, but just in a different, slightly different area. So you mentioned some of those issues that are important to you. So if elected, what do you hope to accomplish, and maybe how would you go about, obtaining funding for French Island, for example?
Well, that's a great question, and exactly kind of what I just talked about. Complete opposite. I just get the seat back at the table, get a strong and fresh voice down in Madison, which we haven't seen for far too long. Just common sense issues. Broadband is actually a big issue up in this neck of the woods. This is something that we need to make sure we have funding for. Clean drinking water, supporting our schools. Common sense issues that have just gone to the wayside. And unfortunately, in western Wisconsin, because we haven't had that good representation, we've lost out on several projects. One of the projects, and we talked about, lacrosse. Now I know we've gone through some issues with UWL in the last year or two with the chancellor, but there's been projects there that we've missed out on because we haven't had that representation. The science building, the second phase to finish that. We don't have that representation, so it won't get finished. That's a big project that a lot of the industries around our area, Quick Trips and Gundersons, and they are fighting for that. That's something I would fight for right away. But these projects, and I mean, we can talk about roads, and unfortunately, I mean, just driving up here, it was a little rough. So these simple common sense issues that I want to make sure we have a voice down in Madison for. We've just been without that for far too long. Yeah.
All right. Anything else you'd like to share?
Make sure to vote November 5th. I know there's going to be early voting and absentee voting. Make sure you know how you're going to get to the polls. I think we had an issue in April election where, I think there was a big storm or something.
There always is.
There's always a storm, right? And there's always an issue on election day. Make sure you know how you're going to go out and vote, and make sure you do it safely and correctly. And make sure to ask your clerks, our awesome clerks over here in Western Wisconsin, make sure you ask how you do that correctly and get out to the polls. We need as many people as we can voting, absolutely.
And I'll have a little bit more information at the end of the show about, learning more about the ballot and polling places, et cetera. So, well, Ryan, thank you so much for being here.
I really appreciate the time.
Ryan Huebsch is a assembly candidate for the 94th District.
Thank you.
I'm joined by Steve Doyle. He is running for Assembly District 94. Steve, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah. Well, could you start off by telling us about yourself?
Sure. I have had this seat since 2011. I was elected in a special election when my predecessor was appointed by Governor Walker to be his Secretary of Administration. So I got elected in a special election right after Act 10. So it was a very tense time in Madison. In fact, years ago, I worked in the Capitol, and you walk right in and everything's just fine. The first day that I got elected and went to the Capitol, I had to go through metal detectors, and it was just a very tense place. It's gotten a little bit better since then, but so I've had this position since 2011. Before that, I was county board chair in La Crosse, and really enjoyed that job because I could actually do things. I could say, I think this is a great idea, let's try this, and it would actually happen. Then I go to Madison, and I have these great ideas, and some of them happen and some of them don't happen. So it is a little bit different world. In my other life, I'm a lawyer, and I do a lot of mediation. So I try to find ways to make things win-win, whether it's a lawsuit against somebody's neighbor or a divorce case or whatever. I meet with people usually in separate rooms, and I go back and forth and try to find ways that people can walk out of there saying, okay, this is good. And that's kind of the skill set that I've tried to take to Madison is I'm a member right now of the minority party, but I still had a lot of bills get passed because I have this approach that, I want to work with people. There are some of my colleagues in both parties that like to get the headlines. They like to be bomb throwers. That is not me at all. I'd rather work under the radar and try to get things done. A good example of that. Several years ago, shortly after I was elected, a person from the tech school came to me and said, we have a disconnect in La Crosse. We've got a lot of job openings in a particular area, and we have people that aren't quite there yet in terms of their training. And they said, let's talk about some ideas that we can make that disconnect be connected. So I met with them, we came up with a proposed bill, and I went to my then colleague at the time, Lee Narrison from the West Beaver-Oakwa area, and I said, Lee, I have this idea, it's going to put people to work, it's going to help our local businesses. Would you be the lead author, since you're in the majority party, and if you'd be nice enough, could you put me as a second author? And Lee said, no, I don't want to do that. He said, Steve, I think you should be the first author, I'll be the second author, and I will tell the leadership in my party that this is an important bill and we should pass it. That's how you work together. I mean, it's that kind of thing where I didn't care if I got the headlines for it or he got the headlines for it. It was the right thing to do, and that is what I've tried to do in my entire assembly career.
So there has been some redistricting. Could you explain the areas that the 94th district covers?
Sure. My district somewhat shifted north. I used to go actually down to the La Crosse County southern line. Now I've moved up, and so I have one small part of the north side of La Crosse. I have Onalaska, Holman, West Salem, Farmington, Holland, and then going up into Trempealeau County. Really, it's kind of almost like an arrow going north. So it goes through Galesville, a little bit through Ettrick, and just a little beyond the Ettrick boundary.
Okay, and that part is new to your
That part
district.
is new to me. I had not represented Trempealeau County in the past, and it's been great. You know, one of the coolest things was doing the tour of the square in Galesville
Yes.
and finding out that all those businesses are women-owned,
Yes.
which is, you don't see that very often, so that was pretty neat. And everybody's just been so nice to talk with. I mean, it's just like this whole Midwest, everybody's really friendly and very, you know, very encouraging. And you know, people don't ask me, are you a Democrat or Republican? They're like, hey, let's just talk.
So you have served in the assembly for a while. What makes you interested in running for this particular office again?
So in the past, my entire career so far has been in the minority. And it was like deeper and deeper and deeper in the minority as time went on. And Madison is so divided. And it's because the split is so big. We have, you know, when you look at the old lines, people in Madison, for example, are going to be Democrats, and your concern if you're a Democrat in Madison is not that you're going to get beat by a Republican, is that you're going to get beat by another Democrat. So you want to be as liberal as you can get. If you're in the suburbs of Milwaukee, you're a Republican, you're not going to get beat by a Democrat, you're going to get beat by a more conservative Republican, so you move further to the right. So we have these two camps that don't even talk with each other. And that has been so frustrating, and that gap has only seemed to widen. Now with the new district lines, it's much more balanced. And you know, I don't know come November if the Democrats will have a majority or the Republicans will have a majority, but everybody pretty much agrees it's going to be very close. What does that mean? We have to talk with each other. And that is what I have been doing all along. So that's why it's like, this is a great opportunity for me to use the skill set that I've developed as a lawyer, as a county board chair, and in the assembly, of bringing people together to get things done by agreement. I mean, we have so many ideas out there. A simple one, the Democrats support a tax cut, the Republicans support a tax cut. They're a little bit different than each other. So what does that mean? Nothing happens. You know, and so if we can get people to at least start to talk with each other, I think we can do great things for the state of Wisconsin.
So what issues that are local to this area do you advocate for then in Madison?
Well, schools is certainly a very important one. We are better than we were a few years ago. We gave the schools and actually local governments in general a shot in the arm, but we have a long way to go in that regard. And if you talk to school superintendents, they'll tell you the number one problem is special education. That is so expensive, and it only takes one or two cases to just blow a huge hole in the budget. So I think we really need to work on that. We also gave a shot in the arm to roads. We're getting better, but this is Wisconsin. We have 4 seasons, and we have real hard time keeping our roads up. So we need to continue to work on that. And then healthcare. We need more access to healthcare. What's happened north of here with the closure of the one facility. Fortunately, we haven't seen the ripple effects down in the southern part of the district, but those kind of things can always happen. And access to healthcare in a country like the United States should be a given, but it's not. So those are probably the 3 biggest issues that I like to work on in Madison that have an effect statewide, but certainly in my district.
So speaking of that, if reelected, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, 2 things. One is I certainly want to be involved in those big issues that I just described there. But I've really kind of made my name doing those under the radar issues. So the speakers task forces that he creates every 2 years are something that's really been attractive to me. The first one that I was actually a co-chair of was called the Study Committee on Child Welfare, kids in the abuse and neglect system. So what we found was that kids would be maybe 8 years old, and in the course of their lifetime they had been in maybe half a dozen different foster homes, no stability. When I was in my early years of practice, I represented kids that were in neglect and abuse cases. And then several years later, I would see those kids' names on the criminal calendar. It's like, we failed. I mean, we saw this child as a 4-year-old, and now we're seeing this child as a 14-year-old or a 24-year-old, and this is our fault. So we had a lot of ideas to fix problems. I think we passed probably, 8 to 10 bills to make that process better, make it more stable for the kids. It doesn't get a lot of headlines. The governor came to La Crosse to sign the bill because most of those bills were my bills. But it's one that, like I said, it doesn't get a lot of headlines, but man, we changed a lot of lives. And so I'm very proud of that. I also was the vice chair of the Speaker's Task Force on Suicide Prevention. Personal issue to me. I lost a brother to suicide a couple decades ago. And so I've always wanted to do things to help people in that kind of a crisis. And again, we had probably about half a dozen bills that we passed. These are the kind of bills that pass unanimously. Abused and neglected kids aren't Democrats or Republicans, they're kids. People who are contemplating suicide, we don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans, they're people in need. And so, I like those kind of issues. So to answer your question, what do I want to do in the next session? That kind of stuff. The stuff that will make a difference in people's lives that you may never hear about, but it will change lives.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I really have enjoyed being in the legislature. I like doing stuff that helps people's lives in terms of legislation, but the other aspect of being in the legislature is helping people's lives one-on-one. One of the funnest things that I do is I send out honor roll letters, and we have smart kids in my district because I send out about 2,000 of those every semester with a handwritten note on each one, because we don't seem to pay a lot of attention to the good stuff that kids do. We pay attention to when they're in the paper doing something bad. So I like doing that kind of thing. I have a staffer in Madison that was just an expert on helping people during the pandemic who weren't getting their unemployment compensation. And we had people from all over the state literally calling our office. So it's helping people that makes a difference in their life that is so cool about this job. I mean, I can actually get things done that makes me feel good about doing it. I don't go to Madison and yell and scream and pound my fist on the table over different issues. I go to Madison, roll up my sleeves, make some phone calls, write some letters, meet with people. That is, for me, what the job is all about, and that's what I want to continue doing.
All right, well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
Steve Doyle is running for the Wisconsin Assembly, District 94. I'm joined now by Terry Schoonover. He is a candidate running for the 29th Assembly District. He's running as a Democrat. Terry, welcome.
Thanks, Melissa. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. Can you start off first by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I live between Alma and Cochrane in Buffalo County. Born and raised in Wisconsin. I was born at St. Joe's in Marshfield and grew up in Loyal, Wisconsin, oldest of 9. So I had to figure out how to get along with people.
Natural born leader.
Hopefully. The new 29th Assembly District actually runs for most of Trempealeau County, all of Buffalo, all of Pepin, and most of Pierce. So it basically runs from Trempealeau, village of Trempealeau, all the way up to Prescott, over to Pigeon Falls, Whitehall, Arcadia, Mondovi, Durand. I've put on probably over 3,000 miles so far, just talking to constituents. And it's a big place.
Yeah, and not an easy drive anywhere
No,
you go from there.
No, I know. You know, going through these coulees and valleys, but it's beautiful. I mean, you know, the driftless area is just a marvelous spot. Now we've got a lot of rain here. The last few days there was a little minor flooding, but I was able to get through it. Okay.
So then, what brought you to this area?
Well, actually, I worked at Mayo Clinic for 20 years, and so when I retired, we moved to our homestead here, and I've been here 7 years.
Wow.
And we literally, my wife is from the cities, I am from Loyal, worked in Rochester. We literally, when we retired, we drew 3 circles and said, this is kind of in the middle, and it was right on the river. I like to ride motorcycle, snowmobile, and it's just been it's a gorgeous area. And so that's kind of what brought us here. We initially we've been converting highly erodible bluffland into pollinator habitat, prairie, to try and keep the soil out of the river. And I thought retirement was going to be, you know, a piece of cake, and in 7 years I've been as busy as I've ever been. But it's looking great. It's fun to be here.
Now you're running for Wisconsin Assembly. What made you interested in running for that particular office?
Well, 3 years ago I got involved. I kind of cut my teeth on fair maps. And so the first thing we did in Buffalo County, we approached the Board of Supervisors, and we said we'd like to get a referendum on fair maps. They were being passed all over the counties in the state. And unanimously they said, yes, let's put a referendum on the ballot. And in November then of 21, I think it was, the referendum passed by almost 70% in conservative Buffalo County. So Republicans and Democrats both agreed we should have fair maps. And that got me involved, and then I worked with some folks who I guess liked the way I was working, and I got prodded here back in March to, you know, find out if I'd consider running for this position. And so that's what, and my first call was actually to someone who I worked with on the fair maps to see if they would, I thought they'd be more qualified than me. I was going to be retired, enjoy my prairie, have a beer on the deck, and not, you know, do anything else this summer. They weren't ready for the race, for a state race, and so the more I thought of it, I thought, you know, if they thought I was a good candidate, I'm all in. My campaign managers got me going to every village, town, county board meeting, events. Yesterday I was at the Buffalo County Dairy Breakfast. Kind of a shout out to Marbeck. It's amazing to me. Farmers are pretty resilient. You know, it was canceled on Saturday because of the rain. And but when you look at the scale of this, it's just amazing the support that farmers in our farming community have. So it was really encouraging to see that.
Okay. So I know you mentioned fair maps and that the Assembly 29 is newly redistricted to include more of those areas. What issues are you hearing that are important to people living in that area?
What I've been hearing consistently from every corner of the district is that the voters they're exhausted at the level of hyperpartisanship in Madison. They're tired of the gridlock, and so they just want a candidate that can actually collaborate, work in the middle to get things done. One of the things I did, well, I spent a career at Mayo Clinic, and as an emergency management coordinator, part of my job was to collaborate with entities as diverse as local and state law enforcement, EMS, fire departments, public health, elected officials. And if you know some of those groups, they can be fairly strong-willed. But we got along. We got stuff done. And I like to think we were good at doing that because we respected each other. I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but you know, back in the day when Ronald Reagan was president and Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House, during the day they kind of butted heads. They were political rivals. At night, they were two Irish guys. They'd go to the pub and have a couple beers. They liked each other, they respected each other, and they got stuff done. And that's what I'm hearing from voters in the district. One of the most encouraging things I've heard is people, after they talk to me, they say, you know what, Terry, I vote for the person, not the party.
Yeah, I mentioned this to you before, but I'm a town clerk, and I hear that a lot from voters too, voting for the person and not the party. So if elected to this office, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, actually, working across the aisle, I'm at a stage in my life. I'm not too worried about getting beat up if I work in the middle, because right now the extremes kind of beat up those folks that do that. I would probably, a couple issues off the top of my mind that are just really critical. Schools. Prescott just lost a school referendum. 1,400 voters, they lost by 12 votes. And so now they're going to be cutting teachers, classes, or whatever. You know, it just, I don't understand how we can be sitting on a $3.5 billion surplus in Madison. We're capping school spending. And then we're saying, well, if you want to make up the difference, pass a referendum. And some schools can do that, some school districts. Some can't afford it. And I just don't understand how we can kind of ignore that. And we need to support schools. As you know, Eau Claire has just had I would say we're in a healthcare desert.
Yes.
And they've closed a couple hospitals. Now, Whitehall just opened up Gunderson Hospital, which is wonderful, but it's the exception, not the rule. And so we really live in a healthcare desert. Again, we've chosen to not expand Medicaid. It's cost our state about $1.6 billion over 10 years. Now that would buy a lot of healthcare services. I understand there's a philosophical difference, but you know, we're subsidizing Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan. They're all taking Medicaid expansion. We're not. And so why are we subsidizing those states and not getting that benefit?
What other issues are near and dear to your heart?
Well, as we talked a little bit about election integrity, and you know, I would say if people are interested in finding more about me and my the priority issues that I have, you know, we've got a really comprehensive website, Schoonover for 8029.com. But election integrity, I'm a poll worker. I've taken the training, and my mom, who still works the polls in Doyle, Wisconsin, she's 87 years old. It kind of bothered me in the last couple of elections that poll workers were being kind of harassed. And so I took the training. I said, I'm going to find out what this is all about. I've taken the training. I'm a chief inspector in the town of Belvedere. And I've met some of the most patriotic citizens who run these elections. And it just really bothers me when people tell me, you know, if I win, it's well run, but if I lose, it's rigged. I would just tell people, take the training, go through it. There's an observation area people can look at to see what's going on, but don't criticize this, because it's really, it's hard for election clerks and poll workers.
Yep. Well, thank you for that. Anything else you'd like to share?
Well, you know, this has been an incredibly busy time. There were a couple folks that asked me, are you sure you want to put your hat in the ring on this crazy thing? I've been kind of jaded at some point, but you know what? We can't give up. And I just said, I will give up I'll give up the summer. I'll get to all these events. I think with my background, people have been telling me they just want a candidate that can work across the aisle and get things done. And so that's why I'm all in. I've been hearing a lot of comments from, you know, roads, the road conditions in Mondovi. I talked to a mother in Duran. She's on 8 waiting lists for childcare. And that's another issue. I don't understand why we can't be doing more to support you know, childcare. Folks they're not making any money. They can't afford to keep the help. Yet we're sitting on this money. Now I would say, you know, we want to save some of that. We don't want to spend it all, obviously, but we've got all these problems out here. The legislature has you know, dismissed early, taken off, and still we've got these issues here, and it just really frustrates me. So I'm hoping people actually research the candidates and look into it a little bit and find out, you know, vote the person and not the party.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Melissa.
Terry Schoonover is a candidate for the 29th Assembly District, running as a Democrat. I'm joined by Sue Ackerman. She is a candidate for the Trempealeau County Register of Deeds, running as a Republican. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks so much for being here. Would you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Sue Ackerman. As Melissa said, I am running for Register of Deeds. I've been employed by the county for 22 years. I'm actually in my 23rd year, and all of that has been in the Register of Deeds office. So I've learned a fair amount. My husband and I moved here from Minnesota in 1996. So as of now, I've lived in Wisconsin longer than I've lived in Minnesota. We raised our 3 children here, and they all graduated from Arcadia High School. And their names are Justin, Taylor, and Brooke. And we live still in Arcadia.
Okay. And you have the luxury of having worked in that office, but the Register of Deeds, I'm not sure everyone knows what that is. Would you mind telling us what that office does and some of the duties that are assigned to that office?
Sure. Well, we record land records, so anything involving land, mortgages, deeds, lis pendens. We also take care of vital records, and we're entrusted with recording them accurately in a timely fashion and preserving them for years to come. We've got records that date back to the 1800s.
Okay. And then what made you interested in running for this office?
Well, a lot of reasons. I really like my job. I like the work. It's fun to, when people come in and you're looking for that small piece of land, when you actually can trace back their history and find it. It's like solving a puzzle. So I just enjoy it. And the next step I felt was to run the office.
And now this is a partisan office, meaning that you have to run as a Republican or a Democrat. You have to declare a party. And the question I get from voters a lot is, well, why is this county office, a partisan office? And, what would you say to that, and what are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right. People look at both sides. They're saying it can be partisan. Is it nonpartisan? Our office is governed by state statutes. So we have guidelines we have to follow. And as far as being, you really have to do it in an unbiased fashion. People come in, you are the keeper of their records. It's public record. Some of the things are confidential. And you have to know what is what. And I feel like everybody coming into the office should be treated with dignity and respect and treated fairly.
Okay. And then if elected to this position, what do you hope to accomplish?
We do have some one-of-a-kind records that are still in our office that aren't backed up. And I think if there's a fire, a flood, anything like that, it's really important to preserve these records. So we have a scanning project that, I would like to see through and get everything backed up.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to share?
The other thing that I would like to mention is that we do have a program called Property Fraud Alert that you can sign up for. It's a free program, and we'll put a number and a website on the screen so you can sign up for that.
Here with me is Mary Martin. She is a candidate for the Trempealeau County Clerk. Mary, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Mary Martin. I have been a lifelong resident of Trempealeau County. Been married 37 years to my husband. We've got 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Been spending a lot of time at softball games this summer. I've graduated from GET. Belong to St. Bridget's Catholic Church in Ettrick. Volunteer there for different things. One of my passions is the Trempealeau County Humane Society. I've been there 15 years. And volunteering, I did payroll, donated my time for payroll and taxes. Enjoyed that very much. The animals are just the best paycheck you can ever get is spending time with animals. So, yeah, I have worked for the county for over 29 years. I started out at the healthcare center. I was the first female farm milker, farm lady, a long time ago, and they don't have the barn anymore. But I started with Trempealeau County at the courthouse in 1995 in the Trempealeau County Clerk's office. So I've had almost 20 years of experience in that office.
Wow.
And then almost 9 years ago, I did a lateral move out to the highway department, and I do cost accounting out there and payroll. A little bit of HR liaison for the guys that work out there when they can't make it into the courthouse. So,
So you worked in that office for 20 years in the county clerk's office. Can you tell us a little bit about the county clerk job?
Yep, I did the payroll part of things. I did the elections, marriage license, a lot of counter help. And tourism used to be in that office, and I did the tourism. So,
okay.
Yep.
All right. So what makes you interested in running for this particular office?
Well, I guess the timing was right. My former boss, Paul Severson, has decided to retire, and I thought now would be a good opportunity to come back. I miss the highway department. It's more with the cost accounting and dealing with the guys and job numbers, and not so much the public. And dealing in the county clerk's office, it's a lot more with the customer service.
Yep.
And I really missed that over the years, so I kind of would like to get back to that. And because I spent almost 20 years in that office, I feel a comfort level in there. And since Paul is retiring, and an honor that he is endorsing me, so I feel like maybe feels I could do the job. So.
Yeah, and so would you mind telling us a little bit about, you mentioned elections are run within that office. Can you maybe explain to us, because I'm also a town clerk, so I do see that side and that clerk support that office provides, but I'm not sure that people always know what the county clerk does and how important that role is. Do you want to share some of your background and expertise in actually having worked in that office?
Yep. The county clerk is responsible for getting the ballot made up properly and getting out in time so the absentee ballots can get taken care of in a timely fashion. Proper placement on the ballot and just making sure the process goes as it should. The election workers have to have trainings. I used to set those meetings up and make sure people got in their time for that is required so they can maintain their being able to be good at what they do in the polling places. And
yeah, it's important.
It is.
So if elected, what do you hope to accomplish in that office?
Well, I guess I've been hearing things with the new administrator in the county that there's talk of financials, maybe getting a new financial system. So I'm just following that along as they go to see where that goes. And if we get a new one, I'll gladly dig in and work on that. Otherwise, we'll continue with the system that is in place. I am familiar with that as well. Just having good support to your coworkers, making sure that they are, knowledgeable of whatever they need to be, or get them the training that they need so they can do good work. And that's, part of the success of the office is everyone knowing what they need to do and getting it done.
So one of the questions I get from voters a lot is, this is a partisan office, meaning that you have to pick a party to be able to run for this office. And a lot of times I hear voters ask, well, why is that? It's a county office. You are conducting elections and marriage licenses on behalf of the county. Like, why does it need to be partisan when it's at the local level? Can you talk a little bit about that, and then your thoughts as you were going through this process on deciding to run and having to choose to run for a partisan office and how?
Yep. When I first started, I always questioned why, or wondered why it had to be a partisan position. Well, there's nothing on that level that you vote at. There's nothing you can do to sway, and your opinion is just as important as everyone else's. You have no power that way. You're just there to issue the marriage license, to make sure the election is run properly, to get the payroll done and pay the bills. I mean, that's so there's the why it is partisan. I guess, if there's grassroots, if it starts at the county level and goes from there. But by state statute, it is partisan, so you do have to pick a party. It was a little bit difficult for me to pick a party, I guess, because just like reffing a ball game, every time you blow that whistle, you're making half the crowd happy and you're making the other side of the crowd upset. And same thing when you pick a party, a political party, you're gonna be, making half of them happy and half of them not. Filling out papers when I went to get signatures, I had people voicing their opinions, strongly about the Democrats and the Republicans. And it's good information to have. I just feel somewhat caught in the middle because there's I can't help them. I can't think of the right word to use, but my voice can't help them be a better Democrat or a better Republican. I just have job duties to do, and it doesn't matter. So.
It is kind of a strange situation, and for the other county offices too. Of course, treasurer, register of deeds, things that you wouldn't associate partisanship with, and that's how it's structured.
Yeah,
so.
And it just, I feel bad because I think at distance, half of the voters from me, if whatever political party I pick, half the voters will automatically be a little bit on the defense just because of the party I'm with and not the ability or inability to do the job. So it's kind of frustrating on that end.
Okay, well, thank you for that answer. Is there anything else you'd like to share? I do have competition, so August is an important election for me, obviously, and my opponent. On August 13th, the primary does make a difference for us. One of us will be going forward to the November election. I do feel somewhat confident in taking over the job. Like I said, I've been endorsed by the county clerk. He's been in the county for over 45 years, and I realize no one will fill those shoes perfectly like he has. But I feel comfortable and confident that I do have knowledge that I could hit the ground running in that position because of the time I've spent in there. I mean, it's almost 20 years, and I know since I stepped away for a few years, things have already changed a little bit, but I do feel comfortable getting back into that role. Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Mary Martin is a candidate running as a Republican for the Trempealeau County Clerk. I'm joined by Michelle Rose. She is a candidate for the Trempealeau County Treasurer. Michelle, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Melissa, for inviting me.
So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Michelle Rose, and I am currently the Deputy Treasurer for Trempealeau County right now. I've been with the county for 24 years. I have worked in various other offices, which includes the Register of Deeds. I was in there for quite a while.
Can you tell us, what the county treasurer does and all the responsibilities that are in that office?
Well, yep. A lot of people just think our office, all we do is collect the taxes and receipt money and pay the bills.
That's a lot, though.
That is a lot, but we do a lot of other things. We only collect the second half of the installments. We do tax foreclosures on properties that haven't been paid in over 3 years. We do tax certificates if you are delinquent the year the taxes were due.
I know being on a town board, I have to come to you a lot for financials and a little bit of tax info for the municipalities too.
Yep, and we do, if you guys have new people in that, we do help train them and let them know the procedures.
Older people with questions.
We're always there to help.
Yep. Okay. And this is a partisan office, the county treasurer, even though it's a county office. And the question I get from voters a lot is, why is it partisan? It's the treasurer position. Can you explain, why it's partisan and having to pick a party to run for that office?
It's a county position, and no matter what party I am, everyone is treated the same. I have to follow the state statutes. I have to follow the tax laws. I have to follow the policies.
Okay. Well, thank you for that background. What makes you interested in running for this particular office?
Well, the current treasurer, Lori Halama, she's retiring at the end of her term. So, and I'm the deputy treasurer, and I wanted to run. I want to do that.
Okay. And then if elected, you are running unopposed, but if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, we have a couple of things. We need to make our county more efficient. So I will be part of looking at new financial program software, and we will be getting new tax program software also.
Okay. Is there anything else about your background that you would like to share that makes you qualified for this position?
Well, I have done financials for a very long time. I was a business owner previously. I did fire departments, financial records. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, I am just excited for this new adventure, and I thank you very much for having me come on this.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on and being willing to share more about the office itself and also, your hopes for it. Michelle Rose is a candidate for the Trempealeau County Treasurer. She's running as a Republican, and she's running unopposed. I'm joined by Rebecca Cooke. She is a candidate for representative in Congress for District 3. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Rebecca Cooke. I was born and raised on an Eau Claire dairy farm, so not too far from here. I grew up showing cows in 4-H from the time I could walk and hold a halter. But like a lot of Wisconsin farmers, we had to sell our cows because of the price of milk and competition with larger dairies, which is a big reason why I'm running, is to really take on those corporate monopolies that are robbing us of our farming traditions and work to really revitalize a lot of our rural communities. And so this is actually the second time that I ran for U.S. Congress, and so I ran last cycle in a Democratic primary, and I lost by just 8% of the vote, but I won a majority of counties, 11 out of 19, and I think it's because I've got a background and a message that I think really connects and resonates with people. In addition to growing up on a dairy farm, I've ran a small business in the district for a lot of years. I ran a retail store in Eau Claire, and now I run a hospitality business. And then I also run a nonprofit organization that supports women entrepreneurs throughout 10 counties originally. So we've helped 45 businesses get launched across the region, and now have expanded to 8 more counties in northern Wisconsin. So we funded things like rural mental health clinics, independent bookstores, farm-to-table restaurants, you name it, really working to try and invest in regional and local economies, because when you drive through a lot of western Wisconsin, you see a lot of Dollar Generals, and that's not what really makes our community special. It's the small businesses that line our main streets. And so because of some of the work that I did with small businesses, Governor Evers appointed me to the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation Board, or WEDC as it's better known. So I was able to advocate for those same small businesses, not just at their kitchen table, but also at the board level as well. And so when this seat opened up, to me, it felt like a real opportunity to step up and to serve my community in a greater way. And so now, it being, 2020, the 2024 cycle, I feel like that's even more urgent, and that we need more working class people and working class voices to represent us in the halls of Congress, and fewer people that are career politicians or radicals that want to hijack our government. So,
and then what makes you interested in running for this particular office?
Yeah, I think in particular, like I mentioned, when this seat opened up, it felt like an opportunity to step up and serve my community in a greater way. The district is 19 counties, so it's pretty large geographically, so it includes Trempealeau County, obviously, goes all the way down to Grant County, where Platteville is, through La Crosse, Eau Claire, which is where I'm from, and then a funky part of it dips over into central Wisconsin, into Stevens Point, and Wood and Portage counties there. And so, I think it really takes somebody that has a voice that can kind of connect with a lot of different constituencies. And I think that's what sets me apart, are my lived experiences. Growing up in a family that's really rooted in agriculture, and having run a small business for a lot of years. And one thing I didn't mention is that I also waitress 3 nights a week. Well, I'm running for Congress 7 days a week. And you don't see a lot of people with my kind of background or my type of profile running for Congress, because it requires raising funds to get there or being independently wealthy. But I think we need more people with my exact kind of background representing us in DC and not having to wait their turn or climb the political ladder, but stepping off the sidelines to be a real voice for working families. So,
and if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
That's a great question. So I'm running my campaign. My platform includes a lot of different things that I think folks here care about, folks in Western Wisconsin that are keeping them up at night. So the top is healthcare, increasing healthcare access and affordability. We just had 2 major hospitals close in Eau Claire, which has, those are repercussions that are felt in communities like this. It's not just affecting people in Eau Claire, but it's affecting a lot of folks in surrounding rural communities. And so, I share this story a lot with people. My parents, they travel to get their dental work done because it's cheaper to do in like Mexico than it is to do in our own country. And when I tell folks that, they go, wow, I know people that do that too, because it is cheaper, and it's cheaper to take a whole trip and do that than to just get your dental work done at home. So, expanding Medicare to cover vision, dental, and hearing, the things that deteriorate as folks age, is just plain common sense to me. And when I talk to people, whether they're Republicans or they're Democrats, they're like, yeah, I get that. That's common sense, right? My dad was diagnosed with cancer at the launch of my campaign, which has been tough for our family for a variety of reasons. But I think what was even more difficult was he went into Walgreens to get his prescription drugs for the first time. He had a $1,300 copay for a 1-month supply of one drug and a $1,500 copay for another 1-month supply of another drug, which is crazy. And that's the story of a lot of people here in Western Wisconsin that are struggling to pay for their prescription drugs. And many times they're life-saving prescription drugs. And so we have so many people that are politicians in Congress that are just lining their pockets with special interest dollars versus taking on those big pharma corporations that are price gouging a lot of consumers. And kind of talking about that, like consumer price gouging. I think there's a lot of folks. When I was with my parents here just the other day, and I was like, what do you think are the biggest issues? And they're like, the economy. And I think there's a lot of people that feel very stretched thin, whether that's at the gas pump, whether that's at the grocery store, and they feel like that squeeze right on their pocketbooks. And so taking on those big corporations that are price gouging consumers kind of at every turn, enforcing antitrust laws, I think is very, very important, and making sure that workers are making wages that are appropriate. A lot of times you see these corporations that are making huge record profits, and the people that are benefiting are not their workers. It's the big CEOs, lobbyists, things like that. And so if we can enforce antitrust laws, I think that's really important, as you're also seeing like a lot of consolidation among different industries. If you think about agriculture, there's like 4 main meat processors, and that's it. That's how much things have consolidated. So that's why I think it's so important to enforce laws like that, or antitrust laws. And then a couple of other issues, there's a lot that I could talk about and a lot of reasons why I'm running and like some of the top things that I want to get done. But whether I'm in an urban community or a small town, I hear from a lot of folks that are concerned about the limits being put on reproductive freedoms and kind of moving back in time to the rights that people had. And so we saw Roe v. Wade overturned, and one of the things I'd like to do when I get to Congress is codify Roe v. Wade into federal law. That's getting back to where we were just 2 years ago. So it's not something that's radical. It's something that we've had as rights for a really long time. It doesn't stop just with like abortion access, but also includes like birth control and IVF. So many things are really under attack. And we've got to work to preserve those rights. And I talk a lot about like freedoms and rights because that really is what it is. It's not my role as a politician to be in a doctor's office making decisions for you and your family. That's between you and your spouse and the doctor. And so that's something that I'm hearing from a lot of people is a big concern and a big issue for them this cycle as well, and beyond obviously this cycle, and things that they're just concerned about. Being a farmer's daughter, having grown up on a dairy farm, I think it would be pretty great if we had farmers that actually crafted the Farm Bill. What kind of a novel concept to have people that actually know something about agriculture craft something that would help to save and benefit small to mid-sized farms like mine that had to go out of business because of the competition with big corporate corporate farms, and you're seeing a lot of foreign nationals that are coming in to buy our farmland, which is also very concerning to me and concerning to a lot of farmers that I'm talking to. And that's from both a food security perspective and also from a national security perspective. And so I think it's really important that we're protecting our land and protecting our food security as well. So, and finally, from an environmental perspective, I think a lot of people in this district care about conservation. And we have some water quality issues that really need to be addressed. So we have PFAS, forever chemicals, that are in our waters, and we know that they are, in some of our big city well waters, like in Eau Claire and in La Crosse, but there's a lot of smaller municipalities that some might not be testing because the cost of remediation is so great. And so I think it's important for us to make sure that we're allocating federal dollars to call for more research, to call for more testing, and to call for more remediation. There's a lot of things when it comes to the environment that I'd like to take on, and then I think that's starting to build strong relationships with rural electric cooperatives who are working as much as they can to move towards more of a reliance on renewable energy than on fossil fuels, but that's going to take some time in order to make sure that our grid is reliable. But being a strong partner with those folks so that I'm crafting legislation that doesn't seem so far out of touch, but are things that our smaller energy companies can actually institute and start to move over.
Okay. You alluded to this, but you represent would represent a very rural area, and Washington, D.C. is anything but, including a lot of the people there. So how would you, represent the rural areas and the rural needs in that, kind of arena?
Yeah. A huge part of it is showing up, and it's showing up now in the campaign, and it's not forgetting the promises that you make. I don't write off any community because it's too small or too red. We really make a point of listening. And understanding issues are going to be different in a rural community versus in an urban community. And you're not going to understand those issues unless you're really talking to local lawmakers. And though I'm running for United States Congress, so we have state assembly reps, state senate reps, county board folks that I can be really hearing from of what are the top issues? What are you hearing in the community of Whitehall or the community of Independence or Arcadia? I'm not going to know what's going on in every community, but if I'm building relationships both with Democrats and Republicans and across the aisle with local lawmakers, that helps me to stay more in tune to what a community really needs and how I can be an advocate in DC. I think the other thing that I really want to do is run a really strong constituent-centered office that has district offices throughout the 3rd CD that feel really accessible for constituents to be able to come in and share their concerns, and have social, caseworkers on staff to be able to help move things through it and really have strong outcomes, that it's not so focused. It's important to pass the laws and get behind the bills that I need to in DC for broader sweeping changes, but it's also important to have a really strong constituent-centered office that actually works just to serve our local communities. And so one of the things I'd also like to do is to have my district or my chief of staff not just be in DC. You'll see a lot of chiefs of staff just stay in DC and the whole focus is there, but to come back and split time and work with our district director so that we're not losing sight of why we're there. And that we were really truly representing voters in the 3rd CD.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Rebecca Cooke is running for representative in Congress for the 3rd District. Absentee voting begins September 19th. Voters may request absentee ballots from the myvote.wi.gov site or by contacting their municipal clerk. Other information, including registering to vote online, how to find a polling place, and what's on the ballot can also be found on the myvote.wi.gov site. Polls open at 7 a.m. on Election Day and close at 8 p.m., and all voters must bring a photo ID in order to receive a ballot. Thank you again to the candidates for participating in the Meet the Candidates series, and thank you for watching.